Hello there. Today I saw The Electric State and now I want to tell you about it. It's a sci-fi adventure story about a teenager going on a road trip across America with a robot to save her brother. It's based on a book and the screenplay was written by Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus. The film is directed by the Russo brothers Joe and Anthony and stars Millie Bobby Brown, Stanley Tucci, Anthony Mackie, and Chris Pratt. The story takes place in an alternate reality where robots rose up against humans in the 90s in a brutal war. Michelle, played by Brown, is an orphan whose family died in an accident. Then one day a robot shows up to her foster home and tells her that her brother is alive and the robot knows where he is. The two head off on an adventure that sees them team up with a scavenger and his robot, played by Pratt and Mackie, and take on an evil corporation headed by a maniacal scientist, played by Tucci. Along the way, they meet all kinds of kooky robots voiced by big-name actors and face off against a team of government agents led by Carlos Esposito. On the positive side of things, the production value of this film is fairly high. The CGI artwork that they use to tell the story is well done. The soundtrack is complex and brings a lot to the table. The cast does okay with their roles, and the story has just enough excitement to keep your interest. Starting with the story, it's a simple tale that opens with a lot of exposition. It tells you all about the alternate history of this world and how robots rose up. Then it introduces the main characters briefly before sending them off on their journey. It's not the most exciting tale, and it sort of struggles to get you invested in the main storyline, but there's enough happening to keep things interesting. There is humor, action, and a little bit of an emotional journey going on. The humor comes in the form of cheesy one-liners, small visual gags, and funny situations. It's not a main focus of the film, but comes often enough to keep things light. The action is mostly CGI fighting between robots with a bit of action posing from Chris Pratt. The fights between the bots are simple fist fights with a few laser guns here and there. Toward the end, there's a big battle sequence between the two robotic sides and a huge CGI fest to enjoy. The emotional journey doesn't have a lot going on, but there are a few touching moments near the ending. Cast-wise, there is a lot going on, but not a lot of depth to any of it. Most of what you see is Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown interacting with CGI robots. The robots are voiced by a plethora of different famous celebrities, but they're rarely given anything to do beyond basic jokes. Millie Bobby Brown is tasked with playing a traumatized orphan hell-bent on saving her brother. She's a little smarter than most, and determined. Chris Pratt plays a scavenger that takes pity on Michelle after she sneaks into his home. He and his robotic partner, played by Mackie, are moronic thieves that survive by being one step faster than the scavengers around them. He gets to do lots of comedy, a little bit of action posing, and a slice of emotion. He plays it like usual, a bit charming, shows off enough comedic chops to make it work with Mackie, and hits the emotional beats. His performance won't have you in tears, but it's the most memorable out of the lot. Visually, the film is fairly basic in what it presents. It spends most of its time on a few different built sets and outdoors in the desert. The built sets provide something for the actors to interact with, and then they enhance them with big CGI overlays. The overlays in the CGI in particular are fairly realistic looking and high quality, but are still clearly CGI. They use it to create lifelike robots that move around and interact with the world and to create impossible settings that don't exist. They do a fairly good job of integrating the two in a seamless way. Sound-wise, the film uses scored orchestral tracks and original pop songs from the 80s and 90s. They use the scored tracks to follow the emotional beats precisely and to enhance every single moment of the story. They use the original pop songs to create hype moments throughout the film. Sometimes they're used quite effectively to make a moment feel special, but often they fall a little flat and are just fun to listen to. On the negative side of things, the story doesn't make sense at all. The cast doesn't get to do much, and Millie Bobby Brown's performance falls flat on its face. It's an alternate reality tale that has to do so much exposition dumping that you'll likely forget half of it before it even becomes relevant. Then it bombards you with endless characters that just don't have a purpose. Toward the end, the heroes come up with the laziest plan in existence, and it magically works because the villains randomly stop being competent. The villains constantly let the heroes escape for no reason, and suddenly grow a conscience at the weirdest of times. It's a story full of Hollywood cliches, and they don't do a good job of selling them. Most of the cast is criminally underutilized as well. Like Carlos Esposito, they stick his face on a robot and have the robot run around while Esposito makes grunting noises and little quips. We barely ever see him in person, and this is how it goes for most of the cast. Then, at the center of the film, you have Millie Bobby Brown. She's supposed to be playing a teenager, but looks to be in her mid-20s. It makes it weird every time they call her a kid or dress her up like one. She just doesn't look like one anymore. Then when it comes time to do the emotional parts of the story, they either didn't give her the time she needed or she couldn't produce the emotions properly. Either way, the main story ends up falling flat because they don't bring anything that they want you to feel. Personally, I was fine with the visual journey and thought Pratt and Mackie made for a decent pairing. I enjoyed the music because I'm a sucker for nostalgia and being pandered to, but the story just doesn't have any bite to it. The cast never gets to deal with any big emotions on screen, and the story has way too many weird moments for it to make sense. It's okay for a one-time watch, but I likely won't come back to this. As for a rating, I'd give this film a 6 out of 10. Remember, these are just my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Bye-bye!